The Gilded Age. Season 3, Episode 6 is not holding back. Betrayals, power plays, and unexpected alliances will shift the foundation of every household we thought we understood. If you thought Episode 5 was intense, you haven't seen anything yet, because what happens next will break apart families, test loyalties, and uncover secrets that could end reputations forever. After the whirlwind engagement of Marian and Larry, things were already complicated by their family's disapproval. But in Episode 6, we see that their problems run much deeper than Agnes's icy glares or Bertha's silent disapproval. Marian is no fool. When Larry leaves town with George to travel across the country, she begins to notice cracks in his story. At first, it's just a few missing details. Then it's his sudden disinterest in replying to her letters. And finally, it's a friend who slips up and reveals that Larry's been enjoying New York's nightlife far more than a newly engaged man should. Marian doesn't explode. Instead, she investigates quietly, and what she uncovers leaves her shaken. Rumors of Larry's late-night escapades swirl, and while we don't yet know the full extent, it's enough for Marian to doubt if she truly knows the man she just agreed to marry. Her faith in him begins to erode, and just like that, the joy of their engagement starts turning into fear and confusion. Meanwhile, back home, Bertha senses the change in Marian's tone during their correspondence and begins to wonder if her silence might just win this battle after all. But George, already aware of his son's recklessness, is caught in the middle. His plan to take Larry on the trip was meant to mentor him, prepare him for leadership, not expose him to temptation. The irony is brutal. As Larry's actions threaten to sabotage his own future, George is too consumed with business chaos to notice what's really happening under his nose. And when Marian decides to confront Larry upon his return, Episode 6 will force both of them to face truths neither of them is ready to accept. Is this engagement already doomed, or is someone else pulling the strings to drive them apart? One thing is certain, Marian is about to make a choice that could change everything, and Larry's reaction will tell us exactly what kind of man he really is. The romance we hoped for may be unraveling before our eyes. And not even Bertha needs to intervene, because the truth is always the most dangerous weapon. Gladyce's transformation begins in Episode 6, not with a grand entrance or royal command, but with a quiet, desperate letter sent to her mother. That letter was more than a plea for help. It was a surrender, not to defeat, but to strategy. Because Gladyce has realized something crucial, survival in Sidmouth Castle won't come from fitting in, but from taking control. And Bertha Russell, the queen of control, wastes no time. When Bertha arrives in London, the temperature in the castle changes, not because of her title or her wealth, but because of her presence, sharp, calculating, commanding. She doesn't ask Lady Sarah to step aside. She doesn't beg for respect. She analyzes, smiles, and strikes with words that cut deeper than any insult. Gladyce watches in awe, and slowly, she learns. This is no longer the same girl who was weeping over her forced marriage. No, this is the beginning of a partnership, a mother-daughter alliance that is equal parts dangerous and brilliant. In Episode 6, Bertha begins training Gladyce not in etiquette, but in power. She teaches her how to listen without revealing emotion, how to walk into a room as if she owns it, and how to make Lady Sarah irrelevant without ever saying her name. And Gladyce surprisingly absorbs it all like a sponge. What we see is not a rebellion, but an evolution. Gladyce begins to hold her head higher. She speaks with purpose, and more importantly, she starts making her own decisions. When Hector tries to defend her from Sarah's constant intrusions, Gladyce no longer hides behind him. She steps forward, claiming her place as the Duchess she was forced to become. But power comes at a price. The castle staff notice the change, and not all approve. Whispers begin about the American Duchess, about Bertha's influence, about a brewing storm in a house that once operated on quiet traditions. Gladyce is no longer the victim of circumstance. She is choosing her path. And when Bertha finally leaves London, she does so with pride in her eyes, not because she rescued her daughter, but because she taught her how to fight. And now Gladyce is ready to challenge Lady Sarah's dominance, ready to become the woman this marriage needs her to be, and maybe, just maybe, even ready to change Hector. Whether that change leads to a real love story or a cold negotiation is yet to be seen. But one thing is clear. Gladyce is no longer someone to be pitied. She is becoming a force. And in this episode, we see that sometimes the most terrifying thing in a castle isn't the rules or the history. It's a woman who finally realizes her power. Episode 6 sets up a turning point, not only in Gladyce's life, but in the dynamic between generations. The sins of Bertha may still haunt them, but her skills have just birthed the Duchess, who may end up reshaping her world. And what happens when Gladyce learns how to use those skills against the very people who once underestimated her? That's the danger. That's the thrill. And that's what makes her one of the most exciting characters to watch right now. While love and power battles rage in London, back in New York, George Russell is facing a storm of a very different kind. One that could bring down everything he's built. In episode 6, the weight of failing business deals becomes unbearable, and for the first time, George looks like a man cornered. The pressure has been building for episodes, but now the collapse begins. His plan to secure control of the Merit Company by buying their shares is falling apart piece by piece. First, Clay, the advisor George trusted for years, tells him the brutal truth. The deal isn't happening. George's reaction is fast and ruthless. He fires Clay without hesitation, replacing logic with desperation. That decision alone signals a shift in George's state of mind. This isn't just business, it's personal, it's survival. And when he sends Larry to negotiate directly with the Merits, it becomes clear George is running out of options, his empire shaking beneath his feet. But Larry, still inexperienced and emotionally distracted by his engagement to Marion, can't deliver what George needs. Meanwhile, Bertha, always the opportunist, tries to step in. She hosts a lavish dinner and turns her charm toward Alfred Merritt, attempting to grease the wheels with social grace. But this only widens the chasm between her and George. He sees her actions not as support, but as interference. He's not wrong. Bertha has always believed in social power, while George lives by financial control. That difference has always been there. But now it becomes a war, and the war turns ugly fast. When Bertha overhears a private conversation about George's financial troubles and later reads Gladyce's heartbreaking letter from London, she's shaken, but not in the way we expect. She brings the pain of her daughter's situation into their argument. She tries to blend business with emotion, but George snaps. The words come out like gunfire. "I won't be home when you return from London." It's more than a threat. It's a line in the sand. A man like George doesn't say those words lightly, and for the first time, the possibility of divorce becomes real. We've seen them clash before, over parties, over status, over control. But this is different. This is about trust, about failure, about two powerful people who suddenly realize they've stopped listening to each other. In episode 6, George spirals deeper. His other plans collapse one by one. The backup investors he hoped would buy in, they walk away. The public markets he considered, far too expensive. Every path leads to debt, humiliation, or betrayal. And now, with Clay gone and Larry unfocused, George is truly alone in his business. The man once known as the strongest pillar of New York's elite is now forced to make a choice no man like him ever wants to make: take on massive debt and risk it all, or watch everything he built crumble. This kind of pressure doesn't just destroy empires, it changes people. And George begins to change. He becomes colder, more distant, less predictable. His confidence gives way to paranoia. He starts questioning his allies, snapping at his staff and shutting Bertha out completely. What's more terrifying than a powerful man losing control? A powerful man who refuses to admit it. In episode 6, we'll see George push to a point where he'll have to ask for help, possibly from someone unexpected, whether that's another business tycoon, a political connection, or even Bertha herself. It's going to sting, because pride is the one thing George Russell has never been willing to sacrifice. And now, it may be the only thing standing between him and total collapse. But here's the real twist. What if Bertha lets him fall? What if she watches him drown just to prove that her way, the social ladder, the elite connections, the manipulations, is stronger than his numbers and deals? Episode 6 could set the stage for a final showdown, not just between a husband and wife, but between two philosophies. George represents the old guard, wealth through work, control through capital. Bertha is the future, Image, influence, and ambition without limits. And when these two forces collide in the heart of the Russell household, someone will break. Whether it's George's empire or their entire marriage, that's what we're about to find out. As the Russell family unravels and the elite of New York reposition themselves, another story unfolds quietly but with just as much weight. Peggy Scott, whose journey has been shaped by loss, resilience, and ambition, steps into the spotlight again in episode 6. And this time her choices could alter not only her future, but the course of her identity. After spending most of season 3 navigating her relationship with William Henderson, Peggy finally began to let her guard down. William, thoughtful and sincere, has stood by her when others, especially his overbearing mother, tried to tear them apart. But in episode 6, that fragile stability is tested. It all starts with an afternoon at a baseball game meant to be lighthearted and ordinary. But nothing about Peggy's life is ever simple. There, she runs into Thomas Fortune, her former editor and the man who once believed in her as a journalist more than anyone else. The encounter is polite, respectful, yet electric with unspoken history. When Fortune invites Peggy to accompany him on a trip to interview the legendary suffragette Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, it's a professional dream come true. This is the kind of opportunity she once thought she'd never get again, the kind that makes her feel alive. But there's a complication. Fortune wants to travel with her, just the two of them. And the moment William finds out, everything shifts. He doesn't explode, he doesn't accuse, but the discomfort in his eyes says it all. Trust and insecurity collide. For Peggy, the decision should be simple: choose her relationship or her career. But it's not that easy. Because for Peggy, this isn't just a story. It's a second chance to reclaim her voice, to be seen as more than someone's potential wife, to finally finish something she started long ago, before grief and circumstance pushed her off course. But William sees things differently. He respects her ambition, sure, but deep down he fears what Fortune represents. The past Peggy never fully explained, the part of her life she kept hidden, the man who once stood beside her when her world collapsed. And suddenly, the tension between them is no longer just about a trip. It's about truth, about who Peggy really is and what she really wants. In episode 6, we watch Peggy face this storm head-on. She tries to explain her connection with Fortune, the complicated history between them, professional, personal, unspoken, but words can only do so much. And William, loyal as he is, begins to wonder if Peggy's heart is still chasing something he can never offer. Meanwhile, his mother watches all of this with a cold smile. For her, this is the crack she's been waiting for, proof that Peggy doesn't belong in their world. As the tension rises, we realize something painful. Peggy isn't just fighting for her relationship. She's fighting for her right to belong, to be loved and respected without giving up her purpose, to be both brilliant and human. The stakes are deeply emotional because if Peggy chooses the trip, she risks losing William. But if she stays behind, she might lose herself. And while episode 6 won't give us all the answers yet, it will force Peggy to choose a path and deal with the consequences. But here's the twist. Maybe she won't choose at all. Maybe the choice will be made for her, because as rumors about the trip begin to circulate, her reputation is suddenly on the line. In a society where women are judged faster than they can defend themselves, especially Black women, Peggy finds herself in a dangerous spotlight. Her friends begin to whisper. William's mother starts planting seeds of doubt wherever she can, and even some of her allies start backing away. Peggy stands at the edge of a personal and public storm, and through it all, Thomas Fortune doesn't retreat. He keeps pushing, reminding her of the writer she once was, the fire she once carried, the future she still deserves. Whether his motives are pure or not is up for debate, but his words cut deep. And in episode 6, Peggy will ask herself the hardest question of all. Is she living the life she wants, or the life that makes others comfortable? For fans who followed Peggy's journey since season 1, this moment feels like destiny, the moment where her two worlds collide and something has to give. No matter what she chooses, episode 6 will mark a turning point for her. A woman who has spent so long surviving may finally have to decide what it means to truly live, and when she does, the ripples will be felt across every storyline, because Peggy's voice has always mattered, and now it's louder than ever. While the grand estates echo with engagements, betrayals, and power plays, there's a much quieter but equally gripping story playing out in the shadows. Oscar Van Ryn, a man who's always walked the line between privilege and secrecy, is about to face the one ghost he's never truly been able to bury: Ma. In the Gilded Age, Season 3, Episode 6, this long-simmering confrontation takes center stage. And it's not just about money, it's about dignity, shame, and the desperate lengths people go to when they're cornered by their own past. For Oscar, Ma's return is like a wound being reopened. Once upon a time, she was just a memory, a warning, a mistake, a lesson he thought he'd learned. But now she's back, and she's not hiding in the shadows anymore. She's out in the open, working again as a sex worker, and that alone is enough to send Oscar spiraling. Not just because of the scandal she could drag into the Van Ryn name, but because her reappearance means only one thing: the money is gone. That money, the one thing he trusted her with, the one hope he had to secure some kind of financial independence, is lost. Or worse, it was never going to be safe with her in the first place. In Episode 6, we see Oscar do something rare. He drops the charm. He drops the clever little quips and the deflections, and he confronts her, head on. The scene isn't loud, but it's heavy with emotion. Oscar isn't angry, he's hollow, and that's what makes the scene so powerful. He isn't confronting her because of greed. He's confronting her because he trusted her, because some part of him, the part he hides behind those smirks and witty comments, still hoped she had a plan, still hoped there was a sliver of redemption in their twisted story. But Ma doesn't come back with answers. She comes back with excuses, and maybe even a little manipulation. She talks in circles, avoids specifics. And when Oscar presses her for the truth, what she did with the money, why she disappeared, what she expected to happen, she gives him a look that says it all. You shouldn't have expected better. And that's the blow that lands the hardest. Because Oscar did expect better. He expected just this once that someone wouldn't leave him with nothing. His entire life, Oscar has been forced to live on the edge of scandal. His preferences, his choices, his desires, they've all been carefully hidden beneath layers of propriety and performance. But with Ma, he was real, raw, unfiltered. And now she's back, exposing everything he tried to bury. What makes this story even more devastating is that Oscar is also at a critical juncture socially. He's running out of options. The financial security he hoped to rebuild is vanishing, and the social opportunities he once relied on, marriage, inheritance, connections, are slipping through his fingers. If Ma's return leads to gossip, or worse, public disgrace, it could be the end of him in New York's elite circles. And he knows it. Which is why Episode 6 pushes Oscar into unfamiliar territory. He's not scheming anymore. He's surviving. And that desperation will drive him to choices we haven't seen from him before. He may try to blackmail Ma. He may try to strike a deal. He may even try to erase her existence entirely, not through violence, but through influence. But the real danger here is what Ma represents. She's not just a threat to Oscar's finances. She's a mirror, a reminder of who he was, who he is, and who he might still become if he can't find a way out of this mess. And as we dig deeper into Episode 6, it becomes clear that Oscar's story is no longer a side plot. It's a warning that even in a world filled with silk gowns and candlelit banquets, some ghosts don't stay buried, some secrets don't fade, and some mistakes demand repayment, no matter how long it's been. By the end of the episode, Oscar is left with more questions than answers. He doesn't get closure. He doesn't get justice. He gets a truth that no amount of wealth can protect him from, that his name, his legacy, and his carefully curated life can be undone by one person who knows too much and cares too little. And perhaps most tragic of all, he knows he deserves it, because deep down, Oscar isn't innocent. He's been playing the same dangerous game as everyone else in this world, and now the price has come due. As Episode 6 comes to a close, we're left watching a man unravel, not with explosions, but with silence, with the quiet horror of realizing you're not in control anymore, that your secrets aren't safe, that the past always comes back, and when it does, it doesn't knock. It kicks the door in. Oscar Van Ryn may wear fine clothes and live in a polished home, but he is standing on a trapdoor. And in the Gilded Age, the fall is always sudden and never graceful. Episode 6 doesn't just deepen personal betrayals, it detonates them. As the Russell empire teeters and Peggy's future hangs in the balance, Bertha Russell enters a war of her own. one she didn't start, but one she refuses to lose. It begins, as it always does with Bertha, in the drawing room, cloaked in velvet civility and iced smiles. But beneath that perfect surface, the knives are out, because Mrs. Winterton has crossed a line. She's not just attending events without Bertha's invitation, she's hosting them. And worse, she's doing it with the kind of elegance and precision that suggests she's not playing house. She's staging a coup. For Bertha, this isn't just about social rivalry, it's about survival. Because in a world where women are measured by their husbands' fortunes and their dinner guest lists, reputation is everything. And right now, hers is under siege. Mr. McAllister, once Bertha's loyal gatekeeper to old money, is showing cracks. He's been spotted at Mrs. Winterton's soirees, sipping tea and laughing as if the war never happened. And when Bertha confronts him, subtly, strategically, he doesn't deny it. He just reminds her that times change, that loyalty is fluid, and that nothing in New York society is guaranteed. But Bertha has never been one to beg. She strategizes, she recalibrates. And in episode 6, she begins orchestrating a counterattack that doesn't involve screaming or scandal, but something far more dangerous: elegance weaponized. She announces a surprise benefit gala, one so grand, so charitable, so impossibly dazzling that no one can refuse. And more importantly, no one can match it. It's her way of drawing the line in the sand, of reminding the city that there is only one queen of this castle. And she doesn't wear borrowed jewels. George Russell, still reeling from the chaos surrounding his own business and social world, watches from the sidelines. He supports Bertha, yes, but episode 6 also shows us a crack in their foundation. Because while Bertha plots her return to the top, George is distracted by deals gone sour, by alliances that no longer hold, and by the gnawing feeling that all their power might be slipping away. He warns Bertha to proceed carefully, but careful isn't in Bertha's vocabulary anymore. Not when everything she's built is on the line. The tension reaches a boiling point when Mrs. Winterton herself delivers the final blow. She's invited Ward McAllister to co-host an exclusive afternoon salon, not just with old money, with the very women who once rallied behind Bertha. The message is clear. Bertha isn't just being outmaneuvered, she's being erased. But if episode 6 teaches us anything, it's that Bertha Russell doesn't go down without a spectacle. In the final moments of the episode, she makes a move so bold it silences every critic, every whisper, every rival. She invites the Duke of Buckingham to her gala, not through intermediaries, not through hope, but with direct, uncompromising force. And when the invitation is accepted, a shiver runs through New York society. Because no matter how many salons Mrs. Winterton hosts, no matter how many alliances shift, Bertha still has the power to summon royalty. And yet, victory in the Gilded Age never comes without cost. The episode ends not with a triumphant toast, but with Bertha alone, staring into a mirror as the servants clear the remnants of another day's battle. She's won, for now. But the war for status never truly ends, and Bertha knows better than anyone that power gained today can vanish tomorrow. Every thread in episode 6 is tied to a larger truth. This world doesn't reward the kind or the honest. It rewards the ruthless, the resilient, the ones who refuse to be forgotten. Whether it's Peggy fighting for her voice, Oscar for his dignity, or Bertha for her crown, the Gilded Age offers no safety, only spectacle, only survival. And by the time the credits roll, you understand one thing clearly. This is not a story about luxury. It's a story about war. And in this war, reputation is the only currency that counts.